How do you get over a heartbreak from making art? Our guest Panchami is well versed in navigating through challenges of trying out different mediums. Her curiosity led her to keep going and to pursue watercolor despite heartbreaks. She has an engaged community of advocates. Her socials are filled with mini tutorials that would cater to anyone who would like to learn watercolor. In this episode, we talked about subjects to paint when starting with watercolor, the quick tip to getting your way around brush control, tips to level up your watercolor skills, where to draw inspiration and how to translate them into painting, how to overcome heartbreaks in art by putting something of your own in it. If you want to be part of the conversation, then send in your questions and topics you want us to cover to hello@etcherlab.com. Hey, this is Jessie, and I'm an artist and studio host for Etcher Lab. We believe in your power to create, so we invited artists from all around the globe to inspire you to keep on creating. So join us in this journey and let's celebrate creativity. This is Make More Art, the podcast.
I'm Panchami. I'm a watercolor artist, and I love to paint with a lot of different mediums. Like I've painted acrylics, I've painted with poster colors, gouache. But watercolor is something that really stuck to me, and I really enjoy painting with watercolors. So this is not something that I started as as a child. So what happened is, this is something that I dabbed into 3 to 4 years ago. So what happened was I quit my job and I moved to Malaysia, and I was jobless and I thought I'll not work, but then I got really bored. So that's when I just thought I'll pick up brush, and out of boredom, I actually picked up brush, and mostly because I was seeing a lot of inspirational, a lot of process videos on Instagram and YouTube. So they look pretty easy and very catchy. So I just thought, okay, I can do it. But when I really tried it out, it was heartbreaking. And because the process videos, when you see, look very pretty and it looks easy, but it really is not. You need to put in a lot of work, you need to put in a lot of practice. So initially it was a lot of heartbreaks, but I really wanted to just get that effect or whatever I'm seeing. I wanted to be able to do that. So it took a lot of practice. Started with simple things, simple subjects, and over time I just tumbled upon certain techniques, and I was like, oh, this is how you get this. And that's how I started experimenting and doing different subjects, different topics, different techniques, all the different kind of effects that we see in watercolor. But what I would like to say is, somehow in my mind I had it that I need to do this, and I need to crack it. So that's what pushed me through this whole process. And it took a lot of practice. It looks so easy when you put up a video, but when I try it, it doesn't come up like this. I don't get this effect. But the thing is, whatever they see is result of my 2 years of practice, right? Somebody who's just doing it for the first time will definitely not get, maybe it has to be fluke, or they must be really talented to just get it right in the first few tries. So everybody has a different learning curve, different time they take to learn certain things. But that's how I taught myself. Did a lot of practices, lot of failures, lot of heartbreaks. But then I still have sometimes heartbreaks, because it's not like every time everything turns out great. But yeah, you have to just hang in there and keep trying.
I love everything you just said, from out of boredom and then trying out and having heartbreaks and then practicing. And I love when you said that out of, you really want to crack it. I think that was the word that you used. You really want to crack it. So you kept on practicing. And looking at your artworks right now, Panchami, I am just blown away, because you can definitely paint using different mediums and subjects, which a lot of your followers ask you for tutorials and videos, because they were just really amazed by how you were able to paint all of those subjects. You talked about having a learning curve. So how long did it take you to really know that watercolor is something that I really want to work on?
As I said, so when I just tried first few tutorials of watercolor, what I saw on these social media, that's when I knew that I wanted to do it. And then when I tried, I liked the effect. I like the way the paint moves. It's not very rigid like any opaque medium. So watercolor is very unpredictable. right? So when you just put it on paper, it's left to you how you control it, and sometimes you just can't control it, but yet you get, a beautiful effect out of it. That's what I love about watercolor. So it's not like nothing can go wrong actually, because it's very loose. It's a loose medium, and it's a transparent medium. So unless and until you just see that it looks ugly to you, then that's a, you just scrap it out. But otherwise, I just feel that it flows, and somehow you can work through it. It always comes up, as a unique art piece at the end of the day. You're not always trying to just make a photocopy of your reference picture.
Mhm.
You're just taking inspiration from something, and you just play with the colors in watercolor.
That's right.
That's how I feel about it,
I,
about the
I
medium.
have to agree, but I would also like to ask you, because this is a common, I guess, misconception or a common notion for a lot of
Mhm.
people who's starting out, that watercolor can be very tricky and difficult.
Yes.
And I know you mentioned that you've also tried acrylic.
Mm.
If you compare those two, for anyone who would be starting out and not knowing which medium to start with,
Mm-mm.
what would be your tip?
For me, from my personal experience, I started with acrylics. That's what
Oh,
yeah. So, okay, there's a backstory for this. My mother is an artist as well. So, she tried to teach me when I was a kid, but I used to just run away. If she just, make me sit and paint or draw, I would
okay.
like, no, I don't want. I used to just run away. She used to teach other kids. I used to
Oh,
draw for them, but I never drew for myself.
okay.
So it was like was just not interested back then. Then it has to come from within. Nobody can force you to make art. So since then, when my mom used to make me paint with watercolor, I used to hate it, but she was adamant that she has to make me paint. So that's when I told her, okay, I don't like this, and she got me acrylics and poster colors. So I found that easier back
Mhm.
then when I was a kid. So
Yeah.
that was like for when I was 10 years old or something. But then I stopped painting after that. But then later on, as I grew up, when I wanted to paint something, I used to always fall back to acrylics because it was easy. And I would say that it's good to start with acrylics because you'll get confident with the brush strokes. You
Mhm.
have to paint within the line, at least at some point of time, so that you know how to control the paint, or you to control your stroke where you want to apply the paint. So when you work with acrylics, at least you're confident with the brush strokes.
Mhm.
So that's I think that helped me a lot, that to control the paint, or to know how to move the brush, how to move a flat brush, or how round brush works, how a thin liner brush works. So I just knew that because I had already worked with acrylics. But having said that,
Yeah.
acrylics and watercolor is totally different. I would just
Yes.
say that only it maybe it might help you a little bit with controlling the brush.
Mhm.
I mean, it won't be like it's an open field and you just don't know what to do. At least you have some practice with
That's a
acrylics.
really good tip about starting with acrylic and then moving to watercolor. Because some people, I also teach kids, and somehow when they start with watercolor with acrylic, it's somehow hard for them to transition to watercolor because they tend to
Yeah.
approach watercolor the same way that they approach acrylic, like very thick. They would want it to be
Mm,
very vibrant. But
yeah.
from your perspective and point of view, Panchami, you said that it's a good practice to start with acrylic so that you can control your brushstroke. And I
Yes.
think that's a
Yes.
really good perspective when you want to start with watercolor because it's
It,
definitely
it's
all about.
it's yeah, because watercolor obviously, as the moment you just put it, it's like it just moves
Yeah,
around,
that's
right? But then you'll be like, am I doing it wrong? But at least if you have some practice with the brush, at least you know that your brush strokes are right. It's just that
that's
the
true.
medium is such that
Yeah.
it blooms.
I like also when you mentioned earlier in that watercolor it's unpredictable, but that's the beauty of it.
Yeah.
That it can surprise you. Now,
Yes.
going back quickly to what you said earlier, that you want to start with simple subjects. So, what
Yeah.
were the few subjects that you started with?
So initially, I started with florals because that was
Or,
something, as I said, because of acrylics, I already knew certain brushstrokes, and I knew that a certain way I'll get certain effect.
yeah.
So it was easier for me to do loose florals, or at least whatever reference I had to translate it into my painting. It was easier because I knew the brushstrokes, and even if I had not known the brushstrokes, it would have been easier for me to do it, because it's not a what to say, it's not a huge, or what to say, a painting that has to come together with lot of different elements. If it's
Yeah.
just one flower, its composition is with 5 to 6 brush strokes that can do it.
Yeah.
So even if that one flower goes wrong, it's not like you've wasted a whole page. You can still try another one, because that's again another different subject on whole, because the watercolor materials are really expensive to
Mm.
just experiment and go wrong every time.
Sure.
Right, it burns your pocket. So you always contemplate a lot. Should I try this? I don't want to waste my paper, I don't want to waste my watercolors. So that also happened a lot for quite some time with me, but then eventually I just gave up, and I was like, I've already bought it, I've already bought all the supplies, so just why not use it before it spoils.
That's true. I have the same habit too, that I'm kind of keeping it in the stock.
Yeah,
Like I don't want to use it first, or I would cut like
cut
short,
small pieces.
small,
Yeah.
short, like small pieces of paper,
Yeah.
just to save. Or sometimes, the good ones, like 300, 320
Mm,
GSM. So I would pin at the
yeah.
back.
Yeah,
That's it.
approach. I always paint on both sides, because
Yeah,
why
it's a
not?
good,
Why
yeah,
not?
why not, right? I mean, not unless
Yeah.
you are like doing it for a commission fee,
Yeah,
then of course it's
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like what you hear so far, Make More Art the podcast is made possible by listeners like you. So we would like to give a shout out to Ramona Wickstrom from YouTube. She said, "What a treat to get to meet the Etcher team. This is the second one I have seen now, and I love them." Andrea Nunez said, "This was an awesome episode. Loved Alon's genuine desire to connect through sketching. Make sure you never miss an episode by clicking the subscribe button now. Thank you for your support. Now back to the show." So florals. Now
Mhm.
tell me how you slowly transitioned to the different, because I know you do a lot of great landscapes, you do paint
Yeah.
skies.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that exactly, sky is what sky was something that I was aiming from day one. That was
Oh,
my
okay.
most favorite subject, and that was something I wanted to paint all along.
Mhm.
And out of lot of disappointments and heartbreaks, I learned it the hard way, that I started from simple subjects like floral. I mean, I'm not saying that florals are easy. I'm just saying that I found it easier. As I said, I can, have just small flowers and practice. So that was easier for me to compartmentalize, like, just one thing
Yes.
at a time.
Yeah.
So that's how I started with that. When I was confident, and I understood how that watercolor is unpredictable, how it blooms, what amount of water, what amount of paint is actually required, and how it behaves. So after practicing a lot of flowers and leaves, I got a hang of it. So after that, I started painting skies. So initially, if I see my old paintings, my approach was not as loose as it is now. I mean, I have a lot of hard edges in my watercolors
Mhm.
earlier, when initially, 3 years back, when I
Yes.
painted clouds. But right now, I mean, over time, I have figured out how to paint it the way I want, the loose candy sky, and
Right. The
the
soft.
soft effect
Yeah.
of,
Yeah.
yes.
I think when you're starting, you're right. There will always be those hard edges, but over time, you really
Mm,
get to identify what
yeah.
your style is and if you're going for loose. And speaking of style, what would you say your style of watercolor is? Because I know there are some of your works that are quite not really very realistic, but somehow they are very
Mm,
defined. And then there are those that
yeah.
are loose. So what would you say your
Yes.
go-to style is?
So I don't like. I mean, I like to paint something that looks close to realism, but
Mm,
at the same time, it's not like a photocopy, or it's not the
okay,
exact same copy.
right.
So I feel that my style is somewhere, some component I decide to paint loose, and some component I decide to make it more, make it more rigid, or
Yeah.
have proper boundaries and hard edges.
Mhm.
So it's like a mix of both. If you see my urban landscape, I like to paint a lot of foliage. My foliage is usually loose, but again, still on top of that, I'll always have some defined leaves,
Right.
some defined flowers.
Yeah.
So I like to mix both, so that it doesn't look too realistic, at the same time it is loose.
So there's a
So
good
that's,
balance of both.
yeah, yes. So that's my generic approach.
Okay. Let's talk about colors.
Mhm.
I saw in one of your FAQs what your go-to colors are. Do you keep like a palette with all of your go-to colors, or are you the type of artist who would leave some of your mix, palettes, and you don't clean your
No,
set?
I clean my palette.
Oh,
I
okay,
clean
you're
it
that type of
because
artist. So you clean them
yeah,
after painting. Okay.
yeah, not after painting, but before starting a next painting, I clean the palette
Uh-huh.
because I want to try new colors. I whatever I have used in my previous painting, I don't want to use the same thing. I like to I like to keep it very colorful, and I like
Yeah,
to,
that's what I've seen. Yeah.
I don't work with mute colors, or I'll have at least four different colors in every painting. So it's like I just love colors. I have to have a lot
Yeah.
of colors, and I have to have
Vibrance.
different
Yeah.
colors.
Right.
Yeah, so that's why I always clean it. Even if I end up doing the same mix, I don't care, but I just have to clean it so that I'm not biased towards what color already is there on my palette, so that I can go with the flow. Sometimes as I paint, I feel like, oh, this color might suit.
Okay.
On the flow, I just try to get the colors and mix.
Something to think about because I don't clean my palette. I just keep
Mhm.
sometimes there are like mixes that I really, really like. And
Yeah.
I don't take notes. I don't
Mm.
write down which
Even
color
yeah.
I mixed. Maybe I should. Let's go back to subjects. And how did
Mhm.
you approach a painting when you're starting it? Because I know you do a lot of subjects, right? But
Yeah.
you have some sort of rituals or how to begin, except of course washing your palette. Do you have any sort of like rituals or process before you start painting? Where do you draw
Yes.
inspiration
So
from? Yeah.
yeah, I usually have reference photos, as in
Okay.
whatever I see in Pinterest, or if I see the wallpaper suggestions in desktops and things like that. And sometimes most of the urban landscapes are from my travel photographs, so I just like to capture those moments. Apart from urban landscape, if it is something like a colorful sky, or sky, or just generic landscape where there are some cascaded
Mhm.
mountains and some roads and trees, so sometimes I like to change the color palette of the reference picture. If it's all green and yellow, then maybe I would try some peach and red mix or something like that. So I like to experiment with a different color palette, but I like to have a reference photo basically for a sketch, or at least to have a idea, about the perspective, to get all the shadows right. I like to have a reference picture, but that's just reference. I just keep it as a reference in case I feel I'm lost. Other than that,
Okay.
it's always after the sketch. I just paint with whatever colors I feel like painting it with.
Yeah.
Yeah, and when
Okay.
it comes to urban landscape, I just keep it however I see in the photograph, because most of the time, if it is from my travel photos, it's like something that I want to keep as a memory and how I remember it. So I just try to keep the colors as real as possible.
Mhm.
But otherwise, sometimes if it has a lot of flowers and colors, then I just put all the colors that I want.
Go crazy with the colors.
Yeah, go crazy
Right.
with the
I
colors.
like it because it's art is an expression, right? And
Yeah.
whatever you would want to express on your works, that would definitely reflect on your art piece and your pieces.
Yeah, I know. I mean, it's a generic, or traditionally people usually follow a certain color
Follow.
palette, like the warm and cool combinations and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But somehow for me, it becomes way too technical. I just like to enjoy and go with the flow. But I'm not saying that that's not a good process or anything. I mean,
Yeah.
that's not what I'm trying to say. I'm just saying that's definitely a good approach, and it obviously gives you a good color balance in your
Right.
paintings.
Mhm.
But somehow for me, I don't enjoy that process, to think so much like this will match with this color or things like that.
Yeah.
I just go with the flow.
I like it going with the flow and looking at a reference photo and changing the colors, shaking things up by
Yeah.
changing the colors
Yeah.
from the reference
Yeah.
photo. And that gives
Yeah.
you the creative freedom to really
Yeah.
transform it into your own.
And yeah, another thing why I do that is, or I would suggest anybody to do that is, it saves you from heartbreak if your painting doesn't look like the reference photo.
That's a really
Because
good one.
obviously, because you know that you have put something of your own in it, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it just directly infers that it cannot look just the same like what is in the photo. Obviously, the colors have changed. So,
It's
even if it doesn't look like it, yeah, usually what happens is, for me, initial days, what I have experienced is the first day when I paint something, obviously it did not look like the reference photo, and I used to feel like this is so bad, I don't like it, I just want to, throw it off. But then the next day or after 2 days, when I look at it without the reference picture in mind, I feel, oh, this is a good outcome. So every time when you have a reference picture, you tend to compare it with the reference picture,
Yeah.
but it might not look the same. 90% of the time it will not look the same, but it doesn't mean that it's not a pretty painting.
To your point, that saves you the heartbreak of looking at the
Yes,
reference photo and say, oh, it doesn't look
yes,
exactly. So let's
yes.
talk about teaching, because I know that you'll be
Mhm.
teaching with Etcher, and we'll talk about that in just a bit. What was
Yeah,
the turning point that led you to that decision that, hey, I think I would want to teach?
yeah, so I was getting a lot of questions over Instagram about about certain videos that I would have uploaded. How do you approach this? How do you approach that? Can you please start a YouTube channel, or can you please some more tutorials and stuff like that? And obviously, back 3 years back, Instagram was totally different. It's not possible to put an elaborate tutorial. At the same time, I did not have the time to make a completely dedicated or a nice YouTube
Right.
video or a tutorial back then. So that's when I just thought that maybe I could just try workshop, when there are a lot of people who are inquiring about how to paint this, how to paint that, how do you do this, how do you do that. And workshops are not really about just the painting, because it's also about lot of materials, because people who attend the workshop, they don't know what are the right stuff that need to start with. At
Yes.
least that, with the physical workshop that I'm talking,
Yeah.
it's also about that, not just about the painting. So I used to get a lot of questions on materials and stuff. So I just thought it's more like educating them how they can start their journey, and just, giving them a push, giving them a start to start painting. So
Right.
that's how it started. And I got good response the first time I conducted a workshop. So I just thought I can just continue this. And it was actually fun.
Yeah, I have to agree with the material, especially with watercolor. It can be a little bit tricky to just go to
And
a
expensive.
workshop and expensive.
Yes.
Yes, if you are not using the right materials, or else you will be frustrated because you're not going to be get it. You will not be able
Yes.
to get the
Correct. The effect that you're expecting.
expecting. Exactly.
Yeah.
So speaking of workshops, and this one I'm excited because I'm sure a lot of people are also looking forward to seeing you paint. With Etcher in your live demo, what will you be demonstrating? Let's talk about the live demo first.
Yeah. So for live demo, we are going to, the whole theme of the workshop, live demo and the mini workshop, is basically urban landscape. I mean, most of the classes are usually, what I have seen commonly is that it's focused on a bigger scene where there are a lot of a cityscape where there is built lot of buildings, or there are too many elements, like there's a water, there's a bridge, there are so many
Yeah.
buildings and going on in the scene. So instead of that, I just thought that it would be interesting to have a subject where we're just concentrating on just a door or just a window pane and just some flowers, or the small components of the urban
Right.
landscape.
Yeah.
So for the live demo, what I have decided, I mean, what we have discussed is to have uh, a window in the scene, a window and some flowers and some colorful wall. So I'm trying to keep it as simple as possible in terms of the sketch and subject, so that we don't have to stick to the exact same color that I'm using.
Yeah.
It's the palette will be, the color palette is open to whatever people is. It's available for the folks who are watching. They can use it whatever they have. At the same time, the sketch is also simple so that they're not overwhelmed.
Yeah.
As simple as possible.
Yeah. Agree.
Yeah, at the same time, get some, share some nice effects, like some brush strokes, or how you can get some different, that woody textures, and different kind of patterns, or how you can
Right.
paint with negative paintings. And just
Ooh,
we just
negative
have a good
painting.
mix up.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's good. Let's touch on real quick before we end this episode about composition. Because given that you're doing a lot of different subjects, how do you approach composition? Because it's a usual question that people would get, like a blank canvas, and I don't know which,
Yes.
yeah, to paint? Which part, or how do I position everything?
Okay. What I would say is, usually when you see a bigger scene or a picture which has a lot of elements as a reference picture, if you have that reference picture, will have a lot of components in it as it is. So if I see a big cityscape, what attracted me is the buildings. So I'll make sure that I have the buildings much more highlighted, and I'm not concentrating too much on the other stuff like the sky and the water.
Okay.
So it's like you're just focusing on that one particular subject that attracted you more, and you concentrate on that. Sometimes it's colors. Sometimes it's like, if I see some edited photograph in Pinterest which has a lot of colorful sky, clouds, and sometimes it's unrealistic. It's catchy to look at. So it's just that color is inspirational, and I don't try to paint it exactly the same way how it is there in the reference picture, but I try to work around with that color and make it look like whatever is there, just taking inspiration from that. I mean, that's one thing that I have learned, that you don't have not to force myself to make it exactly how it looks in the reference picture. You just have to find that, just have to find that thing that attracts you to the painting or that subject that you want to paint.
I like that approach, Panchami, because it's a common composition woes is one of the pain points of anyone who's starting. Like, I really don't know how to start. Where should I put my florals? It up, down, or the center?
Exactly.
Yeah. So I'm pretty sure that during the live demo, especially with you hinting that you'll be focusing on like a zoom in part of the urban landscape, which is like window. They will definitely learn a lot from you. And I personally learned a lot from the techniques and everything that you shared in this interview, especially the approach in painting, the style. So just to wrap up this episode, Panchami, what's your takeaway that you would want our listeners to get from this interview? Like a golden nugget that you would want to share with them.
Yeah. So what I would say is not to get too disappointed. When you're practicing something or trying to learn something, you'll definitely not get the exact same output that you're expecting, especially when you're learning from somebody or you're taking a class or something. It will not be the same because every person has a different approach, different way of moving the brush. So obviously the end result will not look exactly the same. Even I can't reproduce the same painting twice. The second time I paint something, it'll look different than the first one.
Right.
So not to get disheartened is what I would say. Say is continue, even if you feel it's a lost cause. Just continue, because you don't have to lose anything. You'll just learn from, even if it's a failed piece, you learn something what not to do. But most of the time, I'm pretty sure it turns out good, because every painting has that ugly face where you feel that it's not going to go great. But then I would just say keep going, and you just have to keep continuing and not to be disheartened. That's all I would say to everybody who's learning and who's trying to upscale their skills.
Thank you, Panchami. And heartbreaks are part of the process, you guys.
Yes, heartbreak is a part of the process.
Thank you so much.
Just don't let it, get to you. That's it.
Right. Thank you, Panchami, for sharing your process. And I'm excited because I know people will be learning a lot from your demo and your mini workshop. And we look forward you being part of Etcher as one of our artists. So thank you for your time, and please stay safe. We'll speak to you again soon. Thanks, Panchami.
Thank you for your time as well. It was nice talking to you.
Thank you.
Just happy to share.
Making art shouldn't leave you heartbroken. In fact, it should be the other way around. It should inspire you to keep making art. Just like what Panchami said, don't feel disheartened, just keep going. What was your favorite part from the episode? Let us know by leaving a comment through the blog post associated with this podcast at etcherlab.com/Panchami. Want to know what goes behind the scenes here at Etcher? We heard ya. We are lifting the curtain and giving you VIP access to do just that. Get to know who does what here at Etcher Lab. Joining me for the Etcher Community Spotlight is Brittany. I call her Brit, but she's one of, I would say, the OG or the pioneer for the studio host here at Etcher. And a little backstory is that when I wasn't part of Etcher yet, she was supposed to be my studio host. And we had a conversation prior, but this girl has really come a long way when it comes to hosting, and I will let her introduce more about herself. So please welcome to Make More Art, Brittany. Hi, Britt.
Hey, thanks for having me, Jesse. Um, yeah, so my name is Brittany. I'm a Canadian artist. I've probably been creative ever since I was a little girl. My parents would often buy me art supplies and craft kits and stuff like that growing up. My dad was also kind of creative. He would draw and I would color them in. And then that's kind of how I got started, I think, with like learning to, I don't know, shade things properly
Mhm.
and that kind of thing. My dad isn't an artist by any means. He just kind of did it for fun. But yeah, I was doing it ever since I was a little kid and just never fell out of love for it.
An artist by heart and a studio host by day. And that piece that you have on the back is something that you're currently working on, right?
Yeah, that's for my brother. He moved out of my parents' house and he needs some art on his blank walls. So figured that was a good like home welcome gift.
hmm So
Yeah,
I mentioned Britt that you're one of the OGs, like the originals
yeah.
of the studio host for the studio host team. So can you take us through that journey, how you started with Etcher? Because I know that you also
Yeah,
do
so
something on the side, which is for an art supply shop, right? An art shop.
yeah, funny story. I recently left that art supply job. It was honestly very, very tempting to just buy things after my shift all the time. And I was like looking at my bank account and I was like, oh, I probably should stop. That wasn't the reason, totally the reason why I left. I got a better job opportunity at, I'm actually a bartender too. I ended up with Etcher, but basically, like I was a fan of Etcher for a few years. I loved their products and their bag, like their big art satchel. It's kind of dark in the corner, but it's just right there. You can see it hanging up.
I remember you showing
And
that to me during our contact call.
I love it. I love their products. When I literally say in the demos that I do, I have this and I love it. I'm not lying. I actually do
Yeah.
love their products. I was a fan before working for them. And that's kind of how I started working for them. I followed them on Instagram and on their story, they had a quick little post thing of like, do you want to join the Etcher, family and be a part of our like hosting thing? And I was like, cool. That I wasn't working at the time because of the pandemic. I was just at home. I was like, what, this might be fun. I love this company. And I was just gonna apply. I probably won't hear anything back anyways. Probably thousands of people apply to this
Yeah.
job. And then I heard back from the co-founder, Simon, and we did an interview and he was very happy with it. And then I talked to Anya and she basically hired me on the spot in that second interview. And the rest is history.
And here we are. Here we are.
Yeah.
What is with studio hosting that you love so much? I mean, aside of course that you get to work with artists and being part of Etcher, which is like what you said, you've always been a fan of.
Mhm.
But what's the best thing about being a studio host?
I think one of the things that people probably wouldn't necessarily think of saying with this job is that I've really come out of my shell with like talking to people. It sometimes takes me a little bit to warm up. Even at the beginning of demos, I'll still be a little bit nervous. Like at the beginning of this one, when I was talking, I'm still a
Right.
little bit shy. And then, once I get going, I'm okay. In high school, you wouldn't catch me dead doing public speaking. I was terrible at it.
Uh-huh.
I was not good at it. I'm great in one-on-one conversations or small group things. Somehow in this interface, it's easier, maybe because I can't physically see everybody watching.
Mhm.
But yeah, I've come out of my shell a lot since doing that. Another thing, like learning so much, like technique from different artists just from watching. It's great.
You mentioned that you didn't do a lot of public speaking back in high school, but this being a studio host led you to come out of your shell. Take us through your first live demo. Well,
Oh my God.
how was the experience?
It was okay. I don't know if I told you when you were going to be just like an artist working with us and I was doing my host interview with you, how terrible the first one I did went. It was utterly disastrous, in my opinion. So I'll walk you through that. So basically, it was with Jean-François Arnaud. He's a French painter, brilliant painter. It was in the beginning stages. Like you said, I was a little bit more of an OG. There are more OGs than me in the Etcher host community, but I started in 2019 with them. And yeah, so I was about to go live, and I was pretty nervous. It was the first time doing the connection from Zoom to YouTube. And like whenever you do a connection from Zoom to YouTube, a second screen always pops up.
Yes.
And you're just supposed to close that one because you don't need it. It's just extra sound. And I didn't know. So there was like a bouncing feedback of everything that we would say. And I was like, oh my God, where is this coming from? And we're live at this point, and I'm freaking out, not knowing how to close it, get rid of it. And Jean-Francois was like, what is going on? You know, what am I doing? And anyways, so we eventually figured it out. I forget who, I think Anya eventually hopped on and realized that it wasn't going good and she needed to help me. And she did, she saved me. And we had 30 minutes left in the demo, and Jean-Francois ended up just busting out a painting in 30 minutes. Don't ask me how he did it, but it was a beautiful painting. And yeah, so I don't think it's available on our channel because of how awful it went.
In my first live, you were there. In my first mini workshop, you were there too. So it looked like we were the budding that Anya assigned at that time. And I'm grateful because a lot of things that I am doing right now as studio roles, I learned from you. So just want to thank you.
Oh, that's sweet.
But Britt, it's been fun chatting with you. And like what I said, you know, there are a lot of things that you shared in this interview that I didn't know about. And I'm sure our listeners or community within Etcher would be so much interested to learn more about what you do as a studio host, how you started. So thank you for sharing that journey with us and for sharing that commission work that you're currently working on. That's beautiful.
Thank you.
And we look forward to seeing more of you during your live and of course the recorded mini workshop. Thank you, Britt.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye.
Bye. We would love to hear your thoughts, so please drop us a 5-star review on the Apple Podcast, or you can find us on YouTube at Etcher Studio. And hitting the subscribe button is greatly appreciated. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll catch you again next time. Until then, let's make more art.